Hey guys, so today we are going over cell transport. We started with cell transport yesterday. We're going to keep going today. One announcement, if you take AP Spanish, yes, you are taking AP Spanish on May 8th, but you are going to take biology this STAR exam May 7th, so you actually have one less day to review. All right. So I wanted to start by going over a couple questions on your exit ticket since that was a little bit rough yesterday. I'm going to go over questions 3 and 4 because those were the most missed. So question 3 is asking which macromolecules are just biomolecules, makes up the majority or most of the cell membrane. So I know if it's asking me about a biomolecule, I can have one of 4 options: carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, or nucleic acids. I can automatically eliminate nucleotide because that's not one of the 4 biomolecules. If I look at my image of a cell membrane, I can see the molecule that I have the most of are these phospholipids. If I write out the name phospholipid, it has the word lipid in it, therefore it belongs to the biomolecule of lipids. Therefore my answer is B. All right, let's look at number 4. For this question, I just want you to focus on the water portion. So it's basically asking what happens to the cell in this solution. Water is passive. It goes through passive transport because it goes through osmosis. So therefore, water is moving high to low. I'm going to find the higher concentration of water. That's 90%. The lower is 70%. This starts in the cell and goes to outside. So water is leaving. If water is leaving, that means that my cell will get smaller. Right away, I know if I'm talking about water, I can eliminate anything about salt. And then I know if it's getting smaller, then it has to be this one. It's not getting larger. My answer is C. All right. So for our actual continued cell transport notes, if you look at this page, this is simply like a summary of what we're going to talk about. We're going to answer this question later. What I want you to do is flip to the very back of your notes so you see this blank page. All right. So we are going over transport. All right. So transport is just everything passing through a cell membrane. There are two types. There are 2 types of transport. Active and passive. Transport is also for maintaining homeostasis. Okay, so it's everything passing through the cell membrane, maintaining homeostasis or maintaining a balance. 2 types, active and passive. So active, think like a lot of exercise, you're expending a lot of energy, whereas passive is like a Netflix and chill night. You are not expending any energy because you're sitting on your couch like a potato. All right. Active goes from low to high. So from a low concentration to a high concentration, whereas passive goes from high to low. Remember, you're writing all of this down on your paper. If you go from a low to high concentration, you're going against the concentration gradient or like opposite. If it's in passive transport, you're going with the concentration gradient or down the concentration gradient. Now there are 3 types. I'm going to go over this part first. There are 3 types of active transport. The first is a protein pump. So anytime you see pump, you should think active. There's endocytosis, which helps large molecules enter the cell, and exocytosis that helps large molecules exit the cell. That's how you can remember that. For passive transport, there are 3. Simple diffusion helps any type of molecule travel from a high concentration to a low concentration. Facilitated diffusion still moves molecules from high to low, but it needs the help of a protein. And then thirdly, we have osmosis, which is simply the movement of water specifically from high to low. So I want to take a couple minutes to go over osmosis. So osmosis has three types of solutions. The first one is isotonic. So isotonic means that the same amount of water that's leaving is entering. Iso meaning same, so nothing happens to cell size. The second type is called hypertonic. So that means that you have more water leaving, that's why this arrow is longer, than entering. So if more water is leaving the cell, then that means that the cell is going to shrink. This is called a hypertonic solution. Think of lots of hyper children trying to leave the school at Friday at 3 o'clock. Whoo, I'm leaving the school. All right, that means that less children are going to be left in the school. All right, and then lastly, if we have more water entering the cell than leaving, water entering, then that means that the cell is going to swell or get bigger. That would be a hypotonic environment. Think hypo like hippo. Hippos are big, the cell gets bigger. All right, I want you to flip back to this page because we're going to go over this multiple choice question. All right, it says the cell is 3% glucose, which is sugar. It's placed in a solution that's 20% glucose. And which of the following describes what's happening? So I'm going to first annotate my answer choices. I see isotonic, that means same. Hypertonic is smaller. And hypotonic is bigger, like a hippo. I'm going to draw what's happening in my scenario. It says that my beaker, my solution, is 20% glucose. And then my cell is 3% glucose. But miss, we haven't talked about the movement of glucose. No, we have not. So we're going to figure out how much water is in here. So a solution is made up of some sort of solute like sugar or salt plus water. So if 20% is glucose, then I know everything else has to be water. So I would have 80% water here, and then I would have 97% of water here. I'm just making sure that these two numbers add up to 100. So I know that this is inside the cell, this is outside the cell. If we're talking about water movement, I know that's passive transport, and I know that the water is going to move high to low. I'm going to label inside my cell has 97%. That's higher than what's outside my cell, which is lower. Therefore, water is going to move from inside to outside. Water leaves. That means cell gets smaller. I know the type of solution where cells get smaller. If I see smaller, smaller, hypertonic. Your job now is to annotate the rest of these questions. I promise the more you practice, the more you're going to get it. To make sure that we have a handle on transport and that your exit ticket looks so much more glorious today. All right, get started. Have fun.